Alright, so today live review of the Balvenie 14-year-old Week of Peat. This is William Grant and Sons, a product from the Balvenie distillery. It is 48.3% ABV or 96.6 proof. It is non-chill filtered, but does have added color. And 14 years in ex-bourbon, and it's peated to roughly 30 ppm. So this is your 1 week. Balvenie gives you 1 week of peat before they clean everything. So they do peated runs 1 week out of the year, and this is the product of those peated runs. Again, 14-year age statement, so it's like middle age, I suppose, when it comes to like pretty economical age statements. And of course, it is quite a storied bottle. It's got all kinds of this. I think it's part of like some kind of stories series or something like that. All this storied information here. If you want some lore, it's all on the back. We didn't take the time to really digest all that lore, but there's also some other offerings from this distillery that have a similar kind of packaging. Like there's also there's one called the Sweet Toast of American Oak. I think is like a virgin oak Balvenie that you can also get. But this one is, of course, the Week of Peat, the smoky one. But of course, this is a unique malting because as far as I understand, Balvenie still does its own maltings. So this peated malting comes from their own maltings. So it's going to be a slightly different malt profile than any other peated Scotch, I suppose. And today we're going to rate this out of 100. Weak pop, unlucky. Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, 25 for aroma, 25 for palate, 25 for finish, 10 for texture, and 15 for my personal experience. Oh no. Maybe. You want to try it? Okay. See you later. She comes over here and looks at me like she wants to try some, and then when I offer her some, she's like, no, it's fine, and she just leaves. It's not Isla Peat anyway. She wouldn't like it. I think that's what we learned. She wants the fucking Band-Aid note. What's the highest score you've given in a single category? Highest score among the three, like major categories, or do you mean like high score in each category? I think I gave 20 an aroma 23 once. The highest scores that I've ever given, period, are all on Lefroy Carchus 2024, which I gave 20. I gave a 23 for aroma, 22 for palate, and 23 for finish. 9 for texture and 13 for experience. That might be all my top scores, actually. I've given other things the same texture score, but I don't think I've ever given that high a score to anything else in any other category. What? Well, it's at a 15, so that's kind of disappointing. I don't know if you guys heard that, but my experience score is worth 15 points out of the 100 total points. And my wife said that she would give me a 10 out of 15. That's pretty harmful. But she didn't know it was at a 15. What's the most you'd be willing to pay for another cartridge? I don't know. I already have some of the current bottle I have, so I'm not like dying to pay a lot. But I mean, if it was $200, it'd be worth $200. You know what I mean? It's easily worth more than the $146 I paid for it. It's without a doubt. 48.3. Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, though, I think that Port Charlotte's really smooth. Yeah. It's okay. The wife verdict is, it's okay. You had some Port Charlotte yesterday? How did you feel about it yesterday? Do you feel the same? Huh. Yeah, no, that tracks, I suppose. A little more smoky, and I could feel the 50% more. Yeah. See, this one I get fruit out of. See, that's the thing, is like, I don't know. I definitely wasn't getting the fruit out of that Port Charlotte yesterday. Yeah, the Port Charlotte was really smooth for 50%. Like, I definitely get, like, orchard fruit on this one. You wanted it to slap you around a bit more.
Drink it and have it taste like water. I want it to have like kick or something.
We need to introduce you to cask strength whiskey then. The last cask strength whiskey I gave you, you like choked it on, and you were like, "Oh God." I'm just saying. That's how. That's.
Sounds kind of nice.
Sounds kind of nice. I don't know what that says about my wife, but she wants to be slapped around by the whiskey. Yeah, it's like a smoky note. But in this one, I definitely get into more of the, like, apple fruit. Some, like, toasted oak notes. Apple and pear seems fair. Yeah, like your typical kind of like smoky, campfire smoky kind of note. Some orchard fruit characters, like, but there is like a nice toasted kind of oaky note, but not like a dry oak. It feels like more like a toasted oak. It's definitely sharper than the Port Charlotte we had yesterday, like on the nose too. Not a whole lot else hit me right off the rip. I feel like there's some vanilla in there, but not a whole lot. And maybe like a slight herbal character. All right. So on the palate, the Balvenie 14-year-old, the Week of Peat, Speyside, single malt Scotch whiskey. Cheers. He seems unsure about it. What happened is I said cheers, and I was like, wait, I was supposed to say Slanchava. And I was like, oh well. Initially, mostly that smoky note. You get a slight bit of sweetness on the palate. More of that like burnt log, creosote, kind of earthy note to it. Good like intensity of flavor. Not a whole lot of depth of flavor though. Nothing notable about the mouthfeel. So that's like one of those things that's interesting, right? Is there's not much of a proof difference between this and the Port Charlotte, for example. But at 50% alcohol, that Port Charlotte is like clearly like oily and smooth, and this one has kind of got like nothing notable going on in terms of the mouthfeel and texture. So it's not all down to water and proof, right? There's more at play in the mouthfeel of the whiskey than that. A bit of a maltiness on the nose coming in now. Mostly kind of like that fruity character though. Slightly fruity, slightly malty. We're kind of like fading on the smoke a little bit. Maybe a little bit of spiciness in there. Like a ginger. Again, unfortunately, this is color added. It's probably not a lot of color added, but there's some amount. And that's the weird thing too, is we say color added because we're not sure. We're not sure if there's color added. There could be. You could always have a batch where they just didn't add color, but since some of their batches add color, we kind of assume, you know, there's any chance that there could be color here. Looks pretty light, yeah. That being said, though, like for example, this is 14 years old. We've shown, for example, 18-year-old bottles that have lighter color than this, despite using first fill ex-bourbon barrels. So this is a bourbon matured whiskey, so it's not going to be as deep a color as if it had some sherry maturation involved. But just because it's not like, you know, bourbon brown doesn't mean that they didn't enhance it with a couple drops of E150 just to make it look more like something. Because we've had, again, natural colored 18-year-olds with fresh bourbon casks that still look lighter than this. Going for a longer stream, I could potentially. I know we still got to do your bottle, your your bottle shop. I can do it after this if you're game after I'm finished with this. I don't know how long it's gonna take, but I can do it after this for sure. Even if it like puts me overtime or whatever. That's like slight toasted oak notes, kind of nice. But I'm not like in love with the nose. It's like good. It feels like over 17 below 20 kind of score. Got a meeting in an hour? Okay. Again, palate is like slight peaty notes, slight smoky notes, some creosote, a little bit of sweetness, vanilla in there. Into the finish, some spike in the spiciness. Again, some of that kind of like smoky, burnt log, creosote kind of taste. A little bit of earthiness. Some of that like toasted oak note is lingering. Finish is like medium. It's you know, it's nice. The thing that like again sticks out to me on this particular bottle is yeah, sure, it's the Balvenie distillate peated, but it's not really playing outside the box in any kind of way. It's not like kind of like doing any kind of wild thing. It's like it's a pretty standard single malt peated whiskey, and it kind of like almost meets but doesn't surpass any expectation. Like the nose is maybe like a little bit above average, and the palate for 48% alcohol is like again mostly dominated by peat notes, but you do get some of that sweet vanilla character in there, but it's not like doing anything too like crazy there. And the finish is almost kind of like expected. Again, like you get some of that spiciness, you get some of that oak character. There is like that lasting kind of like smoky and peat note in there, but it's not like wowing on any metric. It's kind of just like if you wanted to know what the Balvenie distillate would taste like if it was a peated whiskey, that's kind of what this is. It's not really providing any much more than that. And maybe just the Balvenie distillate in a peated whiskey is like what you pay for this experience, but it's not playing outside the peated whiskey box at the end of the day. It kind of feels like your stereotypical peated whiskey in some ways. The only thing unique about it is it came from the Balvenie distillery and it uses Balvenie malting. So let's focus in on the aroma at a 25. Again, your stereotypical smoky notes. I get in some like apple and pear orchard fruit. Some of that like toasted oak, a little bit of vanilla, and a slight spiciness, like maybe like ginger. Not really hitting deeper, richer sweet notes. Like I'm not like getting sweet enough to say we got like honey and syrup or anything like that. It's kind of more just like, yeah, there's like a vanilla component here that is like slightly sweet, and like maybe the orchard fruits are slightly sweet, but I'm not real. I'm missing that real like hay, like honey, or like table syrup that you get, especially at the bottom of bourbon, ex-bourbon aged spirits. A pretty good, pretty reasonable intensity. Maybe not quite as good. I was hoping. 17. All right. So now onto the palate, which again is mostly peat forward with some like vanilla, slightly sweet ex-bourbon kind of notes. Yeah, just like that smoke, campfire, vanilla, slight sweetness. Not really a fruity sweetness. It is more like an ex-bourbon, almost syrup, simple syrup kind of sweetness. Reasonable in intensity, but nothing like out of that kind of like typical box there. Hit me with 16. All right, now to the finish. All right, we're going to focus on the finish here. Again, slight spike in spiciness. That smoke and creosote is still present. Slight earthy character. Toasted oak, kind of like is the main, like riding out note. I like the intensity of it, but it's kind of like what you expect. Pretty reasonable though. Medium length, 18. Ho 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 ho, ho 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 ho, Merry Christmas. What do I mean length? The length in which you still have flavor lingering in your mouth after you've swallowed. That's like the length of the finish, which is not typically necessarily some amount of seconds, but it's sort of a subjective length, I suppose. All right, let's talk about texture. Out of 10. This doesn't seem like it's anything particularly thick or thin. It's kind of like right in the middle. I found out a whiskey factory close to Greenland. A whiskey factory. That's an interesting way to call a distillery. A whiskey factory. I guess it's kind of not wrong, but Mm, pretty good, actually. I'll give it a 7. 7 on texture. Now, at a 15 for my personal subjective experience with this whiskey. Um, so again, as we always get to this part, I like to ask myself the question, why would I purchase this whiskey over other similar offerings? And we're trying to be price agnostic because this one is a little bit pricier than similar spirits, I suppose. But price aside, why would I go for this bottle? If I had all the bottles in front of me, why would I go for this bottle over a different peated whiskey, I suppose? Um, and this one in particular, for me, is not shining much individual character on it. It feels almost generic. It is a peated ex-bourbon whiskey with, a pretty reasonable ABV, a pretty reasonable age statement, but nothing about it is coming across to me like, here's a unique, interesting thing about this whiskey. It almost kind of just feels like um, a well-constructed, typical Highland sort of whiskey that's peated and has respectable numbers. 14 years, 48.3% alcohol. It feels like, it's putting up some all-rounder nice numbers, but aside from that, like, it kind of just feels sort of stock. It feels like, you know, I would have a hard time if I was like going blind on this particular whiskey. I think being able to tell that it was from Balvenie or had any unique defining characters, it almost feels like just like an almost generic peated whiskey offering. And unfortunately, like, you kind of just hope for a little bit more, a little bit something that would set this apart and define it against something from Isla or something else from some other peated Highlands. For example, what is this doing that no other distillery, no other bottle is doing around these kind of specs? And it's not really like finding a place where it's like, hey, this is the cool thing about this whiskey. It kind of feels like a pretty reasonable all-rounder, but that's not enough, I think, to really have a lasting impression. So for me, this is kind of just like pretty good, but doesn't stand out. We'll give it 6 out of 15 in that respect. So if we calculate this together, we have 17 and 16 and 18. And 7 and 6 is 64. 64 out of 100. This is still actually good. It's just good. 65, we would have called it great, but at 64, we call it good. It's good. It's so sad. At 65, we would have called it great. And to be honest, it reaches that score just simply on the merits of, it's a good proof, so it has that high intensity of flavor. It's got a nice age statement, so that kind of helps with the finish and again the intensity. It's got reasonable aroma. It's got, not searching for notes on the palate and finish. They're quite expressive, but it's just not very wide. Nothing interesting going on. Kind of feels like generic ex-bourbon peated whiskey. Anything unique about Balvenie's distillate didn't come through to me on this bottle. It's not like this was like your like a Craig Ellicky where that's a Craig Ellicky distillate, even if it's buried in sherry or something like that. Just felt too samey. So yeah. I think it's fair